Hi guys, I'm Anuj Jalota. Welcome to the MCQs of CA Inter Financial Management. This chapter is all about types of financing or sources of financing. There are a lot of ways that a company can try to get money. Money means finance. It could either be long-term sources of finance or short-term sources of finance. It could be internal from the business or external from outside. It could be you can take the money from the Indian sources or from the foreign sources like ADRs, GDRs and so on. This chapter will give you all the sources of finance. It also forms base of some chapters like cost of capital, then capital structure and leverages. Let's start it off. Just before I continue, please do note on every Saturday, Sunday, complete lectures of costing of my previous batch are coming on YouTube. Those lectures are enough to get you all 90 plus in costing. Every question of module is covered. There is a dedicated homework section. You get complete free soft copy of the book. Apart from that, there is ranking to every question, summary of every question, tests at the end of each chapter. Nothing else is needed. Let's start it off. The question for today. The question is, equity shares have, get me the four options, an unlimited life, voting rights and receive dividends. Second one, a limited life with no voting rights, but receive dividends. Okay. The third one, a limited life, voting rights and receive dividend. Okay. Lastly, an unlimited life, voting rights and receive no dividends. Now this is basic question. Even if you are there in the 11th or 12th standard, I think you will be able to answer. So comment right now. Let's start it off. The answer over here is, let's try to be discussing those three features. So in this case, types of shares. There are basically two types of shares. You all have preference shares. Okay, preference shares, they are called as preference because they have a preference over the equity shares and hence the name comes. Three features of that. First of all, preference shares have limited life. You cannot have irredeemable preference shares. You will have to redeem the preference shares at a certain point of time. You can try to refer to the Companies Act, okay, for what is the maximum duration of the preference shares that are allowed in India. So therefore, it will have a limited life. That is one thing. Second, preference shares usually do not have any voting rights. They do not have any single voting rights as such. Okay. Although there are exceptions, okay, usually it does not have any voting rights, okay. So usually there are no voting rights. But then in exceptional cases whereby the rights of the preference shares get altered, there could be cases whereby the voting is allowed by preference shareholders also. And lastly, in this case, of course, they have a right to receive the dividend. That dividend is called as preference dividend, and that has to be paid before the equity dividend will be getting paid. On the contrary, let's try to look at equity shares now. Equity shares, of course, have unlimited life. It's a permanent form of capital. Once you raise the equity shares, you might not ever give the money back to the shareholders. Okay, of course, equity shareholders, if they are in need, they can try to sell their equity shares, okay, to other people through a secondary market like BSE or NSE up and so on further. Voting rights. Voting rights in this case, equity shareholders are the true owners. If they do not have the voting rights, who else will have here as such? Further, in this case, the last one, obviously they are entitled to receive the dividend. Okay, and of course they are entitled to receive an amount of dividend. They can get any amount of dividend, but after the dividend of preference shareholders is given. And the rate of the dividend is generally discussed in the annual general meeting, and then those shareholders who are still the shareholders of the company will be getting the dividend. Okay, just one extra thing, if there is a company which has issued ADRs and GDRs like Infosys, like Wipro and so on, okay, even the foreign shareholders will be getting the dividend, of course in a foreign currency. Okay. So therefore, coming back to the answer, I guess equity shares have unlimited life. So it is either A or D. Voting rights, they do have the voting rights and receive the dividend. So therefore, answer should be A over here. That should be the correct answer. Yeah, that is the correct answer. That's it from my side for today. I'll see you all next time in another question. Till then, take care. Happy study. Bye.